We all come in with our hearts full of stuff, some of them difficult, some of them pleasant, some of them confusing, and trying to find some coherence is hard, even for the preacher. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been talking about the church and what it can do to fulfill its mission. And I had someone remind me last week that I must always remember that you all sit there by yourselves with your own lives. So when I ask you as a church to do something, you might sense, well, what about me? And I want to talk about, just for another moment or two, about grief, because grief is a great word because we use it in two senses of being sad, loss, and aggrieved, hurt. And there's not a one of us that does not bring one or more of those in the room with us every week, right? Especially in a recession. It might be health, it might be family, it might be work, it might be the world, it might be your neighborhood, but there's some aggrieved quality. But I'm going to promise you that if we talk about that now, as it says elsewhere in the Hebrew Scriptures, though there be sorrow in the evening, there will be joy in the morning. I'm going to give you sunlight at the end, and I'm going to give you joy at the other end. But I want to acknowledge that the grief and the aggrieved quality is always in the room. Everybody is here dealing with that. And that all these sermons about the church do not overlook the burdens we each carry with us. 2 weeks ago, I said to you that I think we need to do some things with the greater mission of liberal religion: free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Do something concrete, a thing, something you can touch or know. And I mentioned two of them so far, one of which is I think we need to turn Sunday from an hour of worship into a day of church so that people can not only come to church and go to class, but they can meet and talk and study, perhaps sing, play. Because one of the things I know is that, if you look at your order of worship, you can see all those different foreign language phrases. They all say the same thing: Fountain Street Church. And we need to become a more multilingual institution. That is to say, be able to speak liberal religion to the people who want it in their language, whether that's a different generation, a different race, a different class, a different place, so that we do not overlook those searching for the kind of spiritual freedom we enjoy. That's why I like the Statue of Liberty, because we all have that image of people coming from overseas, barely able to speak English, maybe not at all, but they all recognize the symbol and know that means something, and they want to come. And the great thing about America is it said, can't speak the language, that's okay. Come on, we'll make it work somehow. Not quite true. We made it very difficult, in fact. But they made it, and we're richer for it. So the first sermon was making space in this church for the many languages of liberal religion by expanding our Sundays. Last week I talked about how we can grow our souls, those of us who are here, by engaging the great religious answers and questions. Because guess what? All the world's religions ask the same questions. What's true? What's false? What's right? What's wrong? What's good? What's bad? What do I know? What do I not know? How do I figure it out? And they all come up with different answers. And guess what? Almost everyone has some of the answer, and almost everyone has some of the mistakes. That's what Gandhi said. And so I asked you then to make good on that connection, to engage the community of religious thought in a deep way by making our chapel a place where anyone of any faith can come and feel, yes, I will be honored here and respected. A lesson to us in tolerance, a lesson to the community in acceptance. You really like that idea, by the way. I heard a lot of wonderful things, so I'm sure we can make some progress there. Well, this week, again, speaking to the whole church, I want to talk about that third principle, changing the world. And I know that always feels kind of political and kind of arduous. But I think it's not. You know, in some respects, all three of these ideas came from other people, not me. The idea of expanding Sunday came from the families in our character school. The idea of creating an interfaith space that speaks to us and to others came from an imam who came here and told us he wanted to pray in the usual place. And the idea of changing the world that I'm going to share comes from members of our own Social Action Committee. At a meeting 2 or 3 months back, they thought, what if, someone said, we could choose one issue we could work on all through the year, and kids could work on it, and grown-ups, and we could use it in worship, and it would be something we could do and not just talk about. And that really got inside me, because the issue that one picks, whatever it is, always has an issue underneath of it. Because all the great, quote, social problems are moral problems, and moral problems are at root spiritual problems too, aren't they? For example, we struggle with the 2 wars being fought in our name. But war has been on the minds of prophets and sages for 10,000 years. We struggle with the recession and poverty, and yet if we go to the Bible and ask how many verses talk about homosexuality and how many of them talk about poverty, you'll discover that 7 talk about homosexuality and 200 talk about poverty. Clearly, that's an important issue for ancients as well as moderns. We talk about injustice all the time, personal and otherwise, and it's on the mind of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Jesus and the Buddha and the Prophet Muhammad. It's always there. So social issues are by no means not religious or not spiritual. They are essentially religious and essentially spiritual. So the struggle I had that became real to me was how to turn these, quote, social issues back into moral and spiritual questions, so it wouldn't be a church about a social issue, but it would be a church about a moral issue, meaning to live as well as proclaim. And the longer I thought about it, the more I decided, yes, we should try this. Find something that will draw us deep into the spiritual question as well as out into the world. Choose a great hope, a great principle. And that's why I titled the sermon, Homeless, Tempest Tossed. Because not only should we be a place of spiritual welcome, giving sanctuary and hope to those looking for spiritual liberty, everybody wants to go home. How many of you have ever had to leave home? All of us. We all had to look for a new home, whether with a spouse or whether because parents died, or whether a job took us away, but that sense of wanting to belong somewhere where you would be safe and sound, that's universal. Every one of us has it. It looks different for every one of us, and it's not perfect for any one of us. Every Sunday, 2 or 3 gentlemen come and sit and have coffee there. Why? Because they don't have a place to live. The last few weeks, a young woman with children has been coming to see us because she was in a domestic abuse situation, not a member of the church, by the way. And through the work of our volunteer social ministry coordinator, Lisa Najeka, we found her an apartment and helped her get started. And then, oh my gosh, her rent money was stolen, so we helped her again. Do you realize that there's plenty of room in this town from a shelter point of view if you're a single man? There's almost no room in this town if you're a woman with dependent children. Home. Think about it. How many years, 3rd year now, we're sending people to New Orleans to rebuild other people's homes. Our kids in coming of age go to New York or D.C. or someplace else to feed the homeless. And now Haiti, a whole nation that's homeless. Home is a profound spiritual and moral notion. Why did the people and children of Israel leave Egypt? But to find their home. It's profound. And we should not only engage it spiritually, but organizationally. And with our hands. With our minds, with our hearts, and with our hands. And so that's what I propose that we do. Not to the exclusion of everything else, far be it. We are too large and too complex to do one thing. But I believe through thinking about one thing several different ways, several different times, we can come to a new depth spiritually, a new awareness intellectually, and a new strength organizationally.